Sophie Cunningham's cuddle demand to Caitlin Clark fuels Fever reunion buzz.
Wait, hold up. Sophie Cunningham just dropped a throwback clip featuring Caitlin Clark, and Clark's response is literally breaking the internet right now. 3 simple words that have everyone losing their minds. Sophie came back with this whole thing about cuddling and dinner, but underneath all the jokes sits a massive decision that could make or break Indiana's entire future.
Than it looks.
Many Indiana Fever fans want nothing more than for their team to bring Sophie Cunningham back in free agency this winter, whenever the WNBA league office and its players agree to a new CBA. Of course, Cunningham isn't the only member of the Indiana 2025 team that fans are clamoring to bring back, as Kelsey Mitchell is just as beloved among the fan base. But while Mitchell might make more of an impact on the court compared to Cunningham, the latter's off-court charisma and star power have endeared her to the Fever fan base to an impressive degree, especially because
Should the Fever use one of their precious expansion draft protection spots on Sophie Cunningham, even if it means watching another key player get snatched away? Let me know what you think in the comments. So Sophie dropped this Instagram throwback showing her and Caitlin having this sweet moment during last season. Nothing crazy, just 2 teammates who clearly clicked on the court. Then Caitlin responds with exactly 3 words that sent Fever Nation into complete chaos. Time to run it back. That's literally it. But timing is everything here. We're talking about a league where free agency is completely frozen, CBA talks are stuck in quicksand, and expansion drafts are breathing down everyone's necks. Those 3 words aren't just social media fun anymore. Sophie fired back with something even wilder: only if you cuddle and make me dinner twice a week. Obviously she's messing around. Obviously it's just friends being friends. But here's what actually matters in all this. This public back and forth is sending a crystal clear message. Caitlin wants Sophie back in Indiana, and Sophie is all in for another run. Now, before we dive into what this means for roster moves, let's address the absolute insanity that exploded in those comments. People are genuinely asking if Caitlin's been unfaithful to Connor because 2 teammates made jokes on Instagram. This is exactly why covering women's sports gets so exhausting sometimes. 2 players can't even have normal friendly banter without someone trying to create some wild conspiracy theory that has zero connection to basketball. Caitlin is locked in with Connor McCaffrey. Sophie is straight. They're friends and former teammates goofing around online. End of story. Now, can we actually talk about basketball? Here's what should have everyone's attention right now. Sophie Cunningham ranked as the 2nd most Googled female athlete in all of America during not 2nd in women's basketball, 2nd across every single women's sport in the country. She's got her own show on Colin Cowherd's network. She's constantly appearing on major platforms. She's built a fan base that goes way beyond people who even watch basketball.
Mind you, she was also the only player in the entire league that we sat back and witnessed literally physically defend Caitlin Clark on the court. Just keeping it real. Watched a lot of other teammates just stand around while Sophie trying to scrap.
And here's the part that should blow your mind. She only spent 1 season wearing a Fever jersey. Think about how wild that is. 12 months in Indiana, and she becomes the 2nd most searched female athlete in America. Sure, her personality and media work played a part, but the real story is the incredible platform that comes with being Caitlin Clark's teammate. Now Indiana faces this brutal choice because of how expansion drafts work. Portland and Toronto are joining the party, which means the Fever have to shield their most important players from getting picked off. Most expansion drafts let you protect around 5 or 6 players maximum. That's literally it.
News is Indiana doesn't necessarily have to choose when it comes to getting Cunningham or Mitchell. Both players have expressed interest in returning. The Fever's front office will have enough money and flexibility to re-sign them, both if they so desire.
Caitlin Clark, Boston, Hall, and Smith are getting protected no matter what. That's 4 spots locked up, leaving maybe 1 or 2 shields for everybody else. This gets really messy because both Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham are hitting free agency, and both have said they want to stay in Indiana. The positive news is Indiana probably doesn't have to pick just one between Mitchell and Sophie. Both want to come back, and the front office should have the cash and flexibility to bring them both home if they really want to. But here's where everything gets complicated. If they resign both players before the expansion draft hits, they're forced to protect both of them, which burns through two of their extremely limited protection spots. So let's imagine what happens if they leave Sophie exposed because they can't spare a protection slot for her. Portland and Toronto are starting completely from zero. They desperately need players who can immediately put fans in seats and create media buzz. Sophie Cunningham hits both targets perfectly. She's a solid rotation piece who also brings legitimate star power and marketing juice. If she's sitting there available in the expansion draft, she's gone. Absolutely guaranteed. Probably picked early, maybe even first overall. New franchises need recognizable faces, players who can jump on local shows and podcasts, and actually bring an audience with them. They need someone who can create instant fan excitement and media attention. Portland and Toronto are entering a league where Caitlin Clark just shattered attendance records and TV ratings. They're walking into an environment where star power and media presence carry more weight than ever before in WNBA history. Sophie Cunningham is exactly the type of player expansion teams dream about finding. But there's something else that doesn't appear in marketing studies or Google Analytics. Go back and watch the film from last season. When Caitlin Clark took hard hits, when she got knocked around, when opponents were taking dirty shots at the league's biggest attraction, who was the only Fever player consistently standing up physically? Sophie Cunningham was right there. She was the only teammate who would actually get confrontational and protect Clark in real time. Not just give quotes to reporters afterward, but actually step up when the moment demanded it. That kind of team culture and locker room loyalty doesn't show up on any stat sheet, but it absolutely has value. The Fever had players who put up better numbers than Sophie last season, but they didn't have anyone else who brought that specific willingness to physically protect their franchise player when situations got heated. In a league where Caitlin Clark will keep getting targeted by opponents, having someone who's genuinely ready to step up and defend her matters. Now let's bring Kelsey Mitchell into this conversation, because she's obviously a huge piece of this puzzle. Mitchell dropped 17 points per game last season and has been their most reliable scorer for years. She's clearly the top priority from a pure basketball perspective. But if Indiana can only shield one of their free agents in the expansion draft, the basketball choice and the business choice might be pointing in completely different directions. Mitchell is definitely the superior player, no debate there. But losing Sophie to Portland or Toronto might hurt more because she brings qualities that are much harder to replace through free agency or the draft. She brings media attention, fan connection, defensive edge, and chemistry with the star player. Which brings us back to that Instagram moment. This wasn't just friends having fun. This was a public statement. Caitlin Clark made it obvious for everyone to see that she wants Sophie back. When your generational talent tells you she wants a specific teammate back, you pay attention, not just to keep your star satisfied, but because she's recognizing something about team chemistry and fit that might not be visible from the outside. Look at Sophie's real impact beyond the basic stats last season. The Fever transformed from a broken lottery team into a playoff squad. Part of that was Clark showing up. Part of it was Boston taking another step forward. But part of it was also bringing in veterans like Sophie, who knew how to play next to a ball-dominant guard and didn't need to be the main character. She took contact, she knocked down open shots, she defended with intensity, she brought energy off the bench. Those are exactly the traits you want surrounding a young star who's going to control the ball most possessions. Sophie didn't demand plays designed for her. She didn't whine about her minute. She just handled the unglamorous stuff that winning teams require. The schedule creates another problem here. Free agency can't begin until the CBA gets finished. And CBA negotiations are completely frozen over revenue splits and salary cap details. Nobody has any clue when that gets sorted out. Could be next week. Could be next month. But whenever it finally happens, there's going to be a rushed free agency period, followed immediately by expansion draft decisions. The Fever can't afford to wait and see how the market shapes up. They need to make quick calls about who they're prioritizing and who they're willing to risk losing. That's why this Instagram exchange carries more weight than it appears to. It's pushing the conversation into public view where the front office has to deal with what their franchise player wants. Here's another angle that gets overlooked. What if Sophie lands in Portland or Toronto and develops into a legitimate star in her own right? She's 28 years old, hitting her peak years, with a demonstrated ability to create media buzz and fan interest. Put her in a spotlight role on an expansion team that's creating an identity from nothing, and she could absolutely explode. Maybe not as an all-WNBA selection, but as a fan favorite who moves merchandise and fills arenas in a new market. That's incredibly valuable for an expansion franchise. And if the Fever let her slip away for nothing, or lose her in the expansion draft because they didn't protect her, that's a missed opportunity that could sting for years. The other side of this argument is pretty simple though. The Fever can't construct their roster around feelings and social media buzz. They need to focus on winning basketball games. Kelsey Mitchell is clearly a better scorer. Lexi Hall showed real growth last season. Nalissa Smith is a former second overall pick. If protecting Sophie means exposing one of those players to the expansion draft, maybe that's not the smart basketball decision. But here's the reality about modern professional sports. The separation between basketball value and entertainment value is thinner than it's ever been. The WNBA just locked up a TV contract worth $200 million annually, jumping up from $50 million. That huge leap wasn't because of competitive parity or playoff excitement. It happened because Caitlin Clark created record viewership and unprecedented mainstream buzz. The league finally got compensated based on its entertainment worth, not just its basketball skill. In that world, a player like Sophie Cunningham, who delivers real media presence and fan engagement, has more worth than traditional basketball numbers would indicate. She might not make all-star teams, but she's someone casual fans actually know and want to watch. So where does this put the Fever? They're staring at a choice that every front office dreads, picking between solid options with no obvious correct answer. They could resign both Mitchell and Sophie, protect them both, and risk losing someone else important in the expansion draft. They could focus on Mitchell, let Sophie explore free agency, and hope she either comes back or doesn't get grabbed by the expansion team. Or they could make the bold move and secure Sophie specifically because of her off-court impact and her connection with Clark, even if that means making a tough call somewhere else on the roster. Here's what we know without question. Caitlin Clark wants Sophie Cunningham back. The fan base wants Sophie back. Sophie wants to be back. The question is whether the front office values what she delivers enough to make it work. And if they don't, if they let her leave or leave her unprotected, and she becomes a star in Portland or Toronto, they better be confident about whoever they picked instead. Because that's a public relations disaster that follows you for years, especially when your franchise player publicly asked for that teammate to return. So Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark want to run it back, but the Fever front office has to figure out how to make that work without sacrificing other important pieces in the expansion draft. This choice is going to shape Indiana's entire offseason. If you want more WNBA roster analysis and free agency breakdowns, hit that like button and subscribe right now.